We left off with Haman dead. Haman has been hung. And King Xerxes has given all of Haman's power to Mordecai. And he's given Haman's estate, his land, his home, to Esther. And Esther has given it to Mordecai. But we came with the problem. There was one problem. There was still a problem that was left over. What was the problem? Tyler, what was the problem that we still have to deal with? Or that the Jews had to deal with?
Okay. There was still the law that all the Jews that are able to be killed.
Correct. There was still the decree that had gone out saying that all the people in all 27 provinces from Egypt to India could just rise up anytime and slaughter, kill, annihilate, completely destroy every man, woman, and child, Jew in that whole land and take their property. That was still there. Right?
Wait, so it can happen whenever these people choose to.
No. It was on the 13th day of Adar, which is the month. So on the 13th day, then that was the day that everyone was given permission to totally annihilate every Jew, man, woman, baby. Yes, sir.
Okay. Didn't he say that you could kill them and then take all their belongings?
Yes, you could take all their property. Would that give people some incentive to kill Jews?
That's what I was thinking. If it's just every other day, you see them slaughtered. The
Yes.
best houses.
Absolutely. So this is still there. Why was it still there? Why couldn't Esther and Mordecai just say, gone, forget it?
It's a law and you can't undo it.
It's a law, you cannot undo it. The Medes and the Persians had a law. When the king said something, it was as if a god said it. And obviously gods don't make mistakes, so there's no reason to change the law.
So even like a homeless person can just go and kill these people and take their home?
Anybody.
Oh.
Anybody. Okay? So we left off in chapter 8. And we're going to, I want to read chapter 8, and then we'll read chapter 9. And chapter 10 is just that big. And we're just going to go through it, just like we did last time. And my guessing is we'll take about an hour to get through the whole thing at the most and wrap up the story, the book of Esther. And how does it apply? And what are the lessons we can take away from it? Because I think there are a few. Even though God is not mentioned in this book, even though we don't have, great examples of prayer and godly living, things of that sort, we still can walk away with some truths about God and some applications, I think, to how we should look at this. And maybe we do some of this sometimes. So let's look at how the story wraps up. How does it end? Okay? So we're going to start in chapter 8. We're going to read verses, I want to read verses 1 through 8. Okay? That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. That's where we left off last time. Keep going, verse 3. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. If it please the king, she said, and if he regards me with favor and thinks it the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have hanged him on the gallows. Now write another decree in the king's name in behalf of the Jews, as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. Okay. So what does the king say? Well, first of all, what does Esther do?
Plays her little game again.
She plays her little game again. Well, she might be playing her little game again, depending on how you view the Book of Esther. And I've already told you that I think it is more likely that Esther is more of a manipulating opportunist. This is not a picture of a godly woman, but that more of one who knows how to play politics pretty well. And you can look back on previous lessons to see why, and we'll look a little bit later at that one. But let's say, for instance, don't put anything on it yet. She just does what with the king? What does she do in front of the king?
She asks him for an order to be written to overrule the
previous one. Yes, the queen pleads for her people to overrule what Haman's decree was going to do. What does the king say?
Because he attacked you.
I cannot change it. What else?
Make your own rule.
Make your own rule. That's really what he says. He says, if you look at it, he starts by saying, because Haman did this bad thing to you Jews, I gave you his house. I hung him. I killed him. You know what? That's it. Almost, to me, it sounds more like, what more do you want? If you want to change something, change it. You got the ring. That may be reading into it, but I don't see great compassion from the king over the Jews that might be lost, or a great compassion for the fact that perhaps Esther is going to be a little bit torn over the fact that her people, how can I go on and bear it if my people are gone? So he says, Mordecai, you got the ring, make another law. You fix it, because I can't change it, right? Once it's been decreed and sealed with my ring, I can't change it. Nobody can change it, just like we said. Okay, so what do you think they're going to do? What would be a good solution? Come up with a solution for me, Justin. What is a good solution? What do you think Mordecai should do? Yes, Tyler.
He could make it illegal to kill the Jews on the 13th.
No, because that would be basically saying, he couldn't say, we're passing a law saying the first law you can't do. Because the first law already said you could do it. And by saying you can't do it, you've just erased the law that says you can. So that you can't do that.
If the Jews were slaves and not allowed to fight back, I'm going to say he was going to allow them to defend themselves.
So he's to go defend. You can defend yourself, you say, right? So Jews, you can defend yourselves. That's very interesting. I'm glad that you said that. But I got to have a question for you. Did the decree, the original decree, the bad decree, say, Jews, because you're slaves, you cannot defend yourself, you just have to lie down and die? No, it didn't. Would you expect the Jews to simply lie down and die?
No, we wouldn't.
No. Especially if what the ruling is I'm going to kill your father, your mother, you, and any of your babies. And then all that you have, I'm going to take. I don't think that they would simply just let it go. I don't think they would worry about defending themselves.
In Egypt, they were slaves. They didn't fight back those guys because they'd have been whipped or jailed.
Because they didn't have the ability. But remember now, this is the Persian Empire. This isn't Babylonian Empire. This is Persian Empire. Persian Empire, people were allowed. They were conquered, but they were allowed to continue business. They were to make the empire stronger. You can't have one king, one little citadel, one palace, and everybody else is a slave. they are under the rule, but even in Jesus' day, the Jews of that time were under Roman occupation, Roman rule, yet they still had businesses, they had homes, they had international trade. Some of them were very rich, some of them were poor, right?
They didn't go up against the Romans.
No, but this isn't saying, the decree did not say only people who are Persians can attack Jews. It was anybody, even the ones that were other slaves could do this. So not just Persians could attack, but the Persians and the Assyrians and the Egyptians and the Philistines and all these other nations could just attack. Kill them. Take them over. Yes, Tyler?
Wasn't Esther a Jew?
Yes, she was.
So couldn't everyone go after Haman and take his power?
Take her power?
Yeah.
I think that would have been kind of hard for someone to go after Esther.
She's not the head of the household.
Well, besides that, I think the king would be a little bit upset. Wasn't that the reason why he was upset at Haman in the first place? How dare you attack my queen? You're mine. Right? Wasn't that what we saw last time? So the thought being is perhaps it's just Mordecai is just going to pass a decree saying, people, Jews, you can defend yourself. You can fight back. But I think it's a little bit more. Listen to what he says. Okay, let's read the next one. All right, verse 9. At once the royal secretaries were summoned on the 23rd day of the 3rd month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the 27 provinces stretching from India to Cush. Cush is another name for Egypt. 127, excuse me. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemy. The couriers riding the royal horses raced out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was also issued in the citadel of Susa. Okay, what did Mordecai's law grant? What did it do?
I guess it just allowed the Jews to do everything everybody else were allowed to do.
Exactly, to the letter. So what you're saying is that Mordecai made a law that was of equal level to the one Haman did. If you beat up on me, we'll beat up on you. Same. Sound right? If you go back and you look, the same wording is even used in Haman's, that they may kill, destroy, annihilate. Now, there was one thing in the old one, and if I may, let me bounce that back a little bit. Okay, it's back in chapter 3, starting in 13. This is what Haman's law, bless you, this is what Haman's law said. Dispatches, this is verse 13. Dispatches were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces with the order to destroy and kill and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and little children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. Means take their goods, right? Okay, now, Mordecai's, well, let's take a look at it one more time. Verse 11 of chapter 8, the king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. What's the difference?
Basically, they were allowed to attack if they were being attacked. It didn't give them the right to just go out and do it willy-nilly. It just said you are allowed to attack if you are being attacked.
Yeah. The other one, you just go and do it. The other one, you just go and do it.
The other one said, you grant it, you can go out and do it. This one says, the way it's worded is it sounds a little bit different. It says you may protect yourselves.
Yeah, defense.
Defend. If they attack you or any of your women and children, then you may attack back. And you may take their property. Mind you, that's not what it's supposed to say. That line in there that's been edited in the NIV that says, in the middle of verse 11, it says, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them. See that? Then it says, and their women and children. That and their women and children does not belong there. It belongs up on top. Any armed forces and their women and children. It is exactly the same as Hamans. Haman said, you can kill their men, women, and children. That's what Mordecai says. The Hebrew says, you may attack and kill and annihilate anybody that attacks you and their women and their children. And then take their land.
Why did they just change that one piece?
Because it's been translated many times throughout history. But it literally is worded almost verbatim to the same as Haman. So you're right, Tracy, when you say that basically what Mordecai did was wrote another law just like Haman's and made it exactly the same. So you think it's a stalemate, right? Not quite. Mordecai does something a little bit tricky, a little bit more political. How does he send these decrees?
By royalty, so basically
on royal horses. The king's horses carry this message. Tell me something. What do you think is going to happen to the people at the other end? The satraps, the governors, the people who are in authorities in all these different provinces, when they see the king's horse arrive and a new decree saying that the people, anybody who rises up against a Jew the Jew gets to annihilate them back.
a little bit more weight behind that.
There's a little bit more weight. What do you think, what do you say, when you say there's a little more weight behind that?
There may be a trick involved.
What do you think is involved? What do you think is in their mind?
This is coming from the king.
It's from the king. The king put him on his own horses and sent him out. Whatever the first one was, the king is trying to correct it, and he's trying to finagle it so that the first, yeah, exactly. If you were, say you were in Egypt, and there you were a governor. You were, one of the Egyptian governors in Cush. And you received this first one saying, okay, this is, you can slaughter all the Jews, take their possessions. That's one thing. Then several months later, you get another one, and this one arrives on the royal horse, the royal steeds, and it says, all those that were annihilated or allowed to be annihilated in the first ones, they can rise up and they can fight back, and they can fight just as equally and take everything back.
Sounds kind of like a war.
What do you think the person who's the governor is going to do? The one who was appointed by the king to rule in that area.
Put a stop to it.
You think he's going to put a stop to it, right?
Yeah.
This is all political. This is huge politics. And all the says it back up here in verse, verse 9? He says he sends it to the satraps, the governors, and the nobles in 127 provinces. They all receive this message on royal horses.
Intimidation.
Intimidation. Yes, something is amiss.
They'll probably tell whomever they may find trying to assemble to do the Jews, oh no you don't, this came from
Well, let's listen to what happens and how this unfolds, because it's very interesting. Traditional viewpoints of this talk about God moving sovereignly into the hands of the Jews, enabling Mordecai, enabling Esther, bringing all these pieces together to save the Jews. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah. Well, it says here that Mordecai wrote in the name of the king and sealed it with his ring. So maybe he didn't sign his own name to it, did he?
Correct. He didn't sign his own name, but you weren't allowed to. Neither did Haman. Haman signed it in the king's name also and sealed it with the ring. So as far as the law goes, the law is almost identical with the king's name on both and the king's seal on both. The difference is one was ridden in to all the land on royal horses, the king's special breeds, and the other one was just like normal courier, supposedly. Yes?
No, you already answered it.
Okay. Yeah, so let's keep going. Hear what's happening. Let's see God doing great things here. And I say that sarcastically. I want you to hear where the focus of the writer goes in this book. Verse 15. Mordecai left the king's presence wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province, in every city, wherever the edict of the king went, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nations became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. What happened?
Well, turned around.
It really turned around. But why? What was the fear?
Fear of Mordecai and the
Fear of Mordecai? What does it say?
I don't think they even knew what's happening. They were very confused by receiving the second decree, because it's again from the king. So they're probably very puzzled. What is king doing?
Why would people become Jews? It says in that last part, and many people of other nationalities became Jews.
probably because Mordecai rode around thinking he was all that after all that.
I mean,
He was very well favored.
Queen.
Jewish wife, Jewish leader
Yeah.
who's got his signet ring. Hey, the king likes the Jews.
They were afraid. Yes.
Let's be Jews.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Was God punishing the people from Persia?
Not yet. I don't think so. There's been nothing happening yet. But you look at that part. What I want you to do is I want you to watch Mordecai and the Jews, particularly. Watch them through this the second to this last chapter and then the final chapter, the final couple verses. Because I think it's interesting. We don't hear of a fear of God.
Well, they didn't pray. They were feasting and celebrating, so they were throwing a big party.
They were feasting, celebrating, having a blast.
Well, if you weren't a Jew, what did you do? Just sign up to be one?
Pretty much.
Unless you were a man, then you paid the price.
Well, if you wanted to be a Jew and they were following Jewish custom, then yes, they would have to be circumcised. That would be part of the process. But who knows if they were even doing it? We don't have full deliverance yet. We just have Jews you can fight back. Right? We have a fear growing amongst the nations, the other nationalities in the king of Persia. They feared the Jews. Something caused them to fear the Jews. Let's see if we can find out where that fear came from. Chapter 9, verse 1. On the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped to overpower them, but now the tables were turned, and the Jews had the upper hand over those who hated them. The Jews assembled in their cities in all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those seeking their destruction. No one could stand against them, because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. And all the nobles of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and the king's administrators helped the Jews, because fear of Mordecai had seized them. Mordecai was prominent in the palace. His reputation spread throughout the provinces, and he became more and more powerful. The Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 men. They also killed, Parshandadoth, Dalphon, Aspathadorath, Adelia, Aridatha, all these guys. They are the 10 sons, verse 10, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Okay. So it's the 13th day of Adar. Who do the people fear? Mordecai. Why? What does it say?
Because he's getting more and more powerful.
Yes. Mordecai is one bad dude. He is very prominent in the palace. He's getting more and more powerful. Yes?
And yet, when we read of other so-called spiritual leaders, they would encourage the king, the leaders, the people to worship God and to love Him and honor Him, and that's their message. If you go to any of the prophets, where was the focus of the prophets? Love the Lord your God, honor Him and serve Him. And we don't see any of that with Mordecai.
No, you don't see any acknowledgement of God, any encouragement from this great powerful leader who now has influence over all 127. Remember Daniel? Daniel was above all the satraps. He was above everyone else. Remember? The king was going to make him, in fact, Persian king.
Wasn't he the dude thrown in a lion's?
Yes, the guy who was thrown in a lion's den. The one that took place 50, 60 years before Esther. Same empire, different king, same empire. He rose to prominence, and what does he do? He prays. He begs God for forgiveness. He confesses his sin and the sin of his people. He doesn't flaunt it. He's not said to have gained any particular power. He became successful in what he did, but the focus was not on Daniel. The focus was on the God behind Daniel.
Because God had favor with Daniel.
Yes, God had favor with Daniel. Yes, sir.
Wasn't Daniel the one that got thrown in the lion's den?
Yes, that's what she just asked. So, but Mordecai, in Mordecai's case, this case, we don't see that same kind of character and focus on God and a calling. Why wouldn't he call his people to a national day of prayer?
Praise.
Or praise.
Yes.
Yes, whatever it might be. Verse 11 through 17 of chapter 9. We're almost finished. The number of those slain in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. Stop. How many were slain inside the citadel, inside the city? Peter says 500. Is that right?
Including the 10.
200? What?
500.
2? No, there's not 2 people killed. How many? Phyllis?
500.
500. So here's, in the citadel, in the main complex of the king, this one city, 500 non-Jews have been killed. Okay? So the number of those slain in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king that same day. Verse 12.
That was just 500 men.
Yes.
What happened to the family?
Plus the sons of that.
Plus the 10 sons of Haman. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, verse 12. The king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and destroyed 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman in the citadel of Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's province? Now, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? It will also be granted. If it please the king, Esther answered, give the Jews in Susa permission to carry out this day's edict tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged in gallows. So the king commanded that this be done. An edict was issued in Susa, and they hanged the 10 sons of Haman. The Jews in Susa came together on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they put to death in Susa 300 men, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Meanwhile, the remainder of the Jews who were in the king's provinces also assembled to protect themselves and get relief from their enemies. They killed 75,000 of them, but did not lay their hands on the plunder. This happened in the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. Now, you have 2 days in this passage. You have the 13th day of Adar. That was the original attack day. And then you had the 14th day. What was Queen Esther's request? Yes.
For the 14th day that they could go do the same thing as
Yes, give me one more day to slaughter more people. Give me one more day. If this was, okay, that's a great question. Why? Why would Esther ask for one more day in the citadel? Why?
Well, because that way they don't just get the law passed and they all die. And I have another question. Isn't that just making their empire weaker?
Whose empire?
Persian.
The Persians' empire? Is it making the Persians' empire weaker to have the Jews kill a bunch of people?
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes no sense to me. I almost wonder what kind of man and king this King Xerxes is.
He just wants her happy.
But go back to that question. Why would Queen Esther ask for another day? She killed, or by doing so, she almost killed another, almost double. So she killed, 500 are killed on the day of. That's defense. The second day, the 14th, the people did not have the right to fight and kill Jews. But she said, give my edict, give the one my uncle, or my cousin, Mordecai, give his decree one more day.
He doesn't even question it.
So the second day, you don't have people fighting Jews anymore. They don't have the law. It was only for the 13th day. Something happened on the 14th day. The 14th day, the Jews went looking for their enemies to finish the job, quote unquote. Why would Esther do that?
Well,
And why only in Susa?
Because she went to the Lord and asked the Lord, what shall I ask my king, O Father in heaven, or Lord in heaven? I want your wisdom on how to handle this. No, I say that in a joking manner, there is such an absence of prayer or consulting God in heaven as what to do that we've got to get the right message out of this, because this is really not like anything else in the Bible.
Right, exactly. Thank you. It doesn't match the character of God. Yes, in the Old Testament, you have a lot of those times when God said, rise up, Jews, go in, kill all the people from adults, old people, young people, all the way down to babies. God said to do that. There were times to do that. It was very specific land and very specific people. Persians were not one of them. It was only in that land he said do that. He didn't say, go over to India over here and wipe everybody out. He said it here in his promised land, the land that he had given. And he waited 450 some odd years for those people to change their mind, to change their ways, before he sent the Jews in to deal that kind of judgment. When he talked to Abraham, he said, those people have not had enough time. I'm giving them more time. Their sin hasn't gotten to the point where I'm going to address this. So you'll wait. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph in the land for 400 years of Egypt, enslaved. Moses comes along. God says, okay, I've waited long enough. They haven't changed. You're going to go in there and wipe them all out. But the character of God, the character of God's people, that's not their norm. God is a God of mercy, a God of long-suffering and patience, and it was always God who said, go do this.
Now it's Mordecai.
And when now it's Mordecai. And when the people of the Old Testament, the Jews, when they did things their way, and it didn't match God's way, God usually got really angry at the Jews. Remember Saul, King Saul? God said, go in, kill every single one, everything, and kill all the cattle. Take nothing. Kill it all. Saul comes back with a big, fat, juicy cows and cattle and all that, and the king. Samuel shows up, says, what's that bah I hear in the background? What is all that? Oh. Well, you know, it was such a wonderful, wonderful type of victory that God gave us. We wanted to be sure we had plenty of animals to give the best sacrifices to God, so we kept the animals. God doesn't want sacrifice, he wants obedience. Amen. He says, obey me first, then sacrifice. Put me first, then do the ritual stuff. And Samuel picks up a sword and hacks Agag into little itty bitty pieces.
Oh, the other dude gets mad.
Now, hundreds of years later, we have Haman, who happens to be a descendant of that king, Agag, that got hacked to pieces. So,
it was for fear and power purposes only. I mean, first of all, Haman's sons were already dead, so hanging them on the gallows was just a show of probably fear, making everybody fear them.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, so it's just a matter of, see, this is what happens if you stand against us Jews, you know. It was a display of whatever, because like I said, they were already dead.
Yes, Haman's sons are already dead. Why would Esther say, hang them up, impale them, put them on a wall someplace where everybody can see them? Fear. It was to teach a political lesson. Yeah. Don't mess with Mordecai.
And then that's what the Japanese did. They played the game where they would just cut the heads off of people. Just to scare the enemy. Just to scare people, the enemy? What's up?
Didn't they already make that point when they hung Haman?
They hung Haman, so I don't know that they made that point. I think have you ever...
But they didn't.
When I'm struggling, this is why I think it's a good question. Why the second day? If you think about, okay, all we want to do is get past the threat of being annihilated. We don't want to be completely killed and exterminated as a race of people. So we're going to fight, and we've won. The day's finished. It's all over, and we're still here. If that was all it was, then you could have stopped at the end of day 13, 13th day of Adar. But Esther... Yeah, Esther is trying to establish her position. and Mordecai's position. I want you to fear us. I want absolute power.
I thought she wasn't trying to tell people she was in jail.
No, she had already disclosed it. She disclosed it when the Haman was killed. That's how she went. When you remember, she went to the king and said, you know, give me my life. Haman has threatened to kill all the Jews. I'm a Jew. And Mordecai is my adopted father, basically.
I think they were really trying to make their point too that let's not next year let's not go.
Next year, let's not do this again on the next 13th day of Adar.
She was pretty much really trying to make her number one. It was fear and power, and to make a point. Don't mess with us because we're.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of political intrigue, I think. And again, it's only in the place, the citadel, the palace that Mordecai rules.
Well,
that's what I thought the extra day was, to make our people the more dominant race of the area.
Well, you're not going to make it the more dominant race, I don't think, unless Jews were already the dominant race there. Because remember, it's all different kinds of races, all different kinds of nationalities are there. So what she's doing is she is making sure there are no enemies of Mordecai in that city. No threat, no little itty bitty threat in that city for Mordecai. Huh?
She really cares about her life.
Perhaps. Let's keep going, because the next one is the celebration. This is the end. This is the praise God opportunity. They've won.
Right.
So what do?
Eat, drink, and be merry.
Pretty much, verse 18. The Jews in Susa, however, had assembled on the 13th and 14th, and then on the 15th they rested and made it a day of feasting and joy. That is why rural Jews, those living in villages, observe the 14th of the month of Adar as a day of joy and feasting, a day for giving presents to each other. Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Xerxes, near and far, to have them celebrate annually the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into a day of celebration. He wrote them to observe the days as days of feasting and joy and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue the celebration they had begun, doing what Mordecai had written to them. For Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them and had cast the poor, that is, the lot, for their ruin and destruction. But when the plot came to the king's attention, he issued written orders that the evil scheme Haman had devised against the Jews should come back on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore these days were called Purim, from the word pur. Because of everything written in this letter, and because of what they had seen and what had happened to them, the Jews took it upon themselves to establish the custom that they and their descendants and all who joined them should without fail observe these 2 days every year, in the way prescribed and at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and observed in every generation by every family, and in every province and in every city. And these days of Purim should never cease to be celebrated by the Jews, nor should the memory of them die out among their descendants. So Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote with full authority to confirm the second letter concerning Purim. And Mordecai sent letters to all the Jews in the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Xerxes, words of goodwill and assurance, to establish these days of Purim at their designated times, as Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther had decreed for them, and as they had established for themselves and their descendants in regard to their times of fasting and lamentation. Esther's decree confirmed these regulations about Purim, and it was written down in the records. Yes?
I have 2 questions.
Go.
Okay, what does Hadar mean?
Adar is the name of a month. like January, February, March, but it's in Hebrew, Adar. What else? What's your second question?
Okay.
Did you forget it?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to remember.
That's all right. Ask a little bit later, okay?
Sounds like they made their own little holiday, and like how different from, say, the Passover was in Egypt's day.
I'm glad that you said that. It sounded like that they made their own holiday, because that is exactly what they did. They said,
The Jews took it upon themselves.
Yes, in verse 27, the Jews took it upon themselves. They repeated it again in verse 31. Established for themselves. This was not a God-appointed ceremony like the Passover or the Feast of Tabernacles. Those were feasts and celebrations that God said. That was part of the Mosaic Law. This was their own, and it's still celebrated to this day throughout the world. But as I said in one of the other lessons, over the years, Jewish rabbis and leaders and priests and stuff have commented on this part and what was required. What were they to do on these days of feasting and joy and celebration in remembrance of this great deliverance? One of the things that they say is that you are to drink until you can no longer distinguish between cursed be Haman and blessed be Mordecai. So drink yourself to a stupor, to a point where you cannot distinguish what you're talking about. That is the honor, the feasting, joy, celebration in remembrance of that. Now, they may not do that literally, but that is what has been commented. Yes, sir?
Back then, was that their customs?
They made it.
They made it a custom. They made it a custom.
It wasn't like their real custom.
Yes, ma'am. You look like you have a friend, like something, you're pondering something.
I have a couple of points, and that is obviously whether these particular Jews were doing it all wrong doesn't distract from the fact that God used it for his benefit. However, it kind of makes you wonder why then this book was put in the Bible, and for how many thousands of years since it's been written, just about everybody has misunderstood the book.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me deal with both questions. Let me repeat them because I want to deal with both. The first question was,
it was more of a statement.
Well, more of a statement was that whether these Jews, meaning Esther and Mordecai, were politicking and opportunists or they were really godly, really is not the point, because God really did use this opportunity, this time, these events to protect his people, to save his people.
Not his people, you have to clarify.
Now, but that's why I want to bring that up. The reason why I want to bring that up is because whom did he want to protect? If he is protecting the line of Jesus Christ, then that line is back in Israel with Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel is the ancestor of Jesus. So if God was protecting the Jewish line so that Christ could come in and so that God's plan from the beginning before time could actually take place, then yes, God did use these, manipulate, make happen certain events so that that line would be, at least that line, would be protected. The question is, would God have had to manipulate, change things, bring about the second law if Mordecai had just given Haman respect in the first place?
Ooh. Don't know, because obviously Haman had a hatred for the Jews that stemmed far deep.
Oh, go back. Remember, I know that's what you're taught. You're taught that Haman had a hatred for the Jews.
No. First of all, you can't just have, well, I don't think, whether it states that or not, I don't think a person can have a hatred for a certain race based on one person. So I think perhaps it went deeper than Mordecai. Just Mordecai was the basic straw that broke the camel's back. That's kind of what
Perhaps that's true. Perhaps that's true. Perhaps Mordecai was the thing that kicked off Haman's hatred. But mind you, the only thing that we know of, based on the reading, that kicked off Haman was when the king's guards told Haman, you know, there's a Jew Mordecai over here that won't bow down to you, that doesn't give you respect. And the king's guard had gone back again and again and again. Well, when Haman, if he really had that bitterness towards Jews in his heart, A, why hadn't he done anything prior to record? Why wasn't it in the records? 2, when he got the power, why didn't he do something then? It seems as though, okay, yeah, we have issues, we have history type of thing, but, you know, I tolerate you, you tolerate me, and we'll just leave each other alone. At least I got the power.
And Mordecai set it off.
But Mordecai set it off. So the question again remains is, yes, God's providence, God's hand, his sovereign hand, his fixing and working is evident all over the book of Esther. But what we tend to do is make every incident God's hand.
No, that's not what I meant.
No, I know it's not what you meant, but that's what we tend to do, which leads to the next question. The next question that you asked was, if this version, this alternate version viewpoint is true, but it's been going, the other traditional view has been going on for thousands of years, how come nobody else has said it? How come this isn't something that's common?
I mean, even if you look at the
notes on the bottom, huh?
It's all about how godly the two of them are.
Right, exactly. So,
I'm sorry, I had a thought and I just want to throw it out there. Queen Esther and Mordecai's behavior is like reverse Hitler. Anyone ever think of that?
no. Actually, I take that back. That is not true. There are some pastors, commentators. This is. Let me tell you, just because you asked the question, and because this morning I was warned, or kindly warned, however you want to. I was encouraged, cautioned to be careful not to teach something that goes against so much church history. There are so few people supposedly out there that would confirm that what we're saying has any validity whatsoever. They believe Esther's godly woman, brave. How many women's studies have you been to? One of my favorite, most respected pastors is John MacArthur. John MacArthur wrote a book called 12 Extraordinary Women. Esther's one of them.
Wasn't Mary Magdalene another?
Well, when you started this study, you did give a, quote, this is an alternate view. You didn't say it was 100% fact, so you kind of gave that.
Yes, and I do say it is, I'm giving it to you. This is an alternate view because it's alternate in that it's not a popular view. So my question is, to respond back to you is how come this view has not become popular? How come it, if any, I mean, I'm not off the top of my head coming up with this stuff. Yes?
Why don't we teach our daughters to go look for the wealthiest, most powerful men and fornicate in order to get their favor so that they can be in positions of authority and rulership?
Because we shouldn't rely on men.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot more than just that. Then we shouldn't rely on men.
Because I guess we don't want to look at, I guess because anybody that is a Christian that follows this Bible doesn't want to view, I don't know, I guess you tend to be in denial over certain things, and you look through, I don't know, rose-colored glasses.
Yes, it's very, very true. And it is true. We have a tendency to look at, because someone's in the Bible, we think, oh, well, they're very righteous, holy people.
Well, they were either good or they were either bad.
Yeah, they're either good or they were bad. Abraham, good or bad?
Both.
Well, what do we lift up?
Good.
We lift up good. What was he?
He was the father.
He was not Jew. He was
Liar.
Liar and coward.
Yeah. And
Lied several times, flat out.
And Jacob wrestled.
What about Jacob? What was Jacob? What was Jacob? What does Jacob mean?
Cheater.
Cheater.
Yeah.
He cheated his brother out of his own birthright.
Yeah.
Right? How about Samson?
Fornicator. He was a prostitute.
He was worse than a flirt because he didn't flirt with Jewish women. He flirted with Philistine women. He flirted with God's enemies.
He's doing it on purpose.
So
yes. What about David? Oh, the one who wrote so many beautiful psalms that we run to.
favor with God.
The man after God's own heart. Yes. What did he do?
Stole another man's wife and
Stole another man's wife, slept with her, had a baby by her, tried to trick him into believing the baby was his.
Had a man killed.
And had an honorable man killed. That husband, he had honor. That he was an honorable man. He said, "I won't go it as long as the war is going on and other people are fighting. I'm not going to take the pleasures of my wife." And so David had no choice. He had to send him back and said, "Okay, well, put him in the hot spot of the battle, and when it's really, really hot, everybody back away so he gets shot and killed."
Well, it just kind of shows you that, you know, you tend to look at the people in the Bible as either inherently good or inherently bad, but it's no different now than it was then. We all are both. We can be good and we can be very, very bad, but we have Jesus, so we're forgiven.
Yes, there is that sense that, you know, we look at them and we look at them as we should look at them as good and bad, but it's even incorrect to say they're good and bad. They are sinful. And God intervenes at time and does wonderful things through them.
Amen.
That would be closer to what we are. We are fallen, sinful, wicked, selfish, idolatrous, me people. That's our nature at first. God intervenes. He comes into that situation by His Spirit, and out of His Spirit comes love and giving and kindness and obedience and sacrifice and things of that sort, right? Well, some of us would question that, but what we do is we moralize the Old Testament. We moralize people in the Bible. Daniel was such a wonderful, wonderful follower of God. I want to be just like him. He was so good. Really. David. Oh, I would love to know God like David. He was such a good man. He wrote such beautiful, beautiful psalms and prayers. I want to be just like David.
He killed Goliath.
He killed Goliath, yeah. I want to be just like him. We moralize them. We make them righteous when they're not. God makes people righteous. We don't.
That's right.
And we aren't righteous either. So I think what happens is we look at the story like Esther and we think, oh, it's God's version of Cinderella. It's the poor little girl who's beaten up and treated badly, and she becomes a great queen and wonderful little princess, and it's a happily ever after. And I think we do that with many. We do the same with Jonah. How does Jonah end?
Angry.
Jonah ends mad at God.
Wasn't he eaten by a fish?
He was swallowed by a fish.
And you know why?
No.
Because he refused to do
What God told him.
God
I was
told
going to
him.
make
Yes.
between Pinocchio and that.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So we end the story of Jonah and we think, Jonah, good guy, prophet of God, must be okay. And God finishes the book of Jonah with Jonah all over a plant that God allows a worm to eat, and more upset over his personal comfort than over the fact that Jonah wants God to send fire and brimstone on Nineveh, where 144 or 150,000 children and cattle will be fried. And God says, you're more concerned over a plant than over all those people, all those kids and all that cattle. End of Jonah. Period. End of the chapter. Close the book. Wow, Jonah's a really wonderful guy.
Why do you care about the
He's a
plant?
whale puke.
He's whale puke. Well, we don't know it was a whale. Yes, ma'am.
Did the
They believed in lots of gods and lots of idols. Yes, they did. So we get to the point, and I'll tell you this for here, just for now. And if you want, maybe I'll do like a little short 5-minute video. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just, how it seems to me, God never will use sin to bless something. It's violating of His own character and personality and His instruction, because sin creates death or bring death.
But Mordecai
so I don't see how these people are sinning and God will, you know. But God, that's grace, that's different.
I'm glad that you said that, because that was one of the things that I had forgotten about. The point that Larissa's trying to make is that God does not create sin to bring about His good. He will not have you deliberately lead you into sin so that He can create some good thing come out of it later. He may let His hand go of you and let your own free desire to do sin, to do evil, run its course, and then make corrections as a result. But He does not initiate sin to bring about good. And when we look at the book of Esther and say, Esther and Mordecai are godly people, you have to do one of two things. Either they have to have had some moment of change and repentance along the storyline, where they started in sin and then had a moment of turning around and came to the Lord. You could either do it that way, or they've just stayed in sin. God has allowed these people to follow the desires of their own heart, follow the wickedness of their own heart, and then He says, but because of your sin, because of the consequences of your sin, I have to step in and protect my people. I have to protect Zerubbabel and his family, because out of that is going to come my plan, and nobody messes with my plan. So that's it. So here's the deal when it comes to over 2,000 years of why has this survived so long? It hasn't. This book has been under scrutiny since it was started. It has been under scrutiny since it started. About a little over 100 years before Jesus showed up, Jewish priests looked at the book of Esther, the story of Esther, and they realized that there wasn't enough holiness, evidence of holiness and godliness in the lives of Mordecai and Esther. So if you went to a Roman Catholic Bible, a Greek Orthodox Bible, or a Russian Orthodox Bible, you would find 6 additions to the book of Esther. One is a vision, a godly vision that was given to Mordecai that starts the book. Another one is a prayer that is recorded from Esther. But they don't show up in the original Hebrew. In fact, Hebrew scholars back at that time have argued that those were not supposed to be there. Martin Luther, the great Reformationist, said Esther doesn't belong in the book at all. Doesn't belong in the canon, doesn't belong in the Bible. He hated the book of Esther because there are just too many pagan isms in the book. Pagan stuff, ungodly stuff. There's not enough evidence that God is in this book. So he said that. And there's been fighting along the way. But that doesn't mean that God's hand is not clear in this. That's the other issue. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if I were Queen Esther and following the Lord, that I might ask the king, will you free all the Jews, all my people, and let us go to our own land, the land promised to our fathers?
Prior to the riot?
Yes, instead of saying let's kill people that come up against us and take their stuff, what if she had just said to let the people be free to go worship God in their own land, and there was an exodus to go. I mean, wouldn't that be a more Moses-like godly ending to this book?
Yes, it would be if all the Jews got up and went home.
Yeah.
Basically.
They still were under, even when they went home, though, they were still under.
Yes.
Well, that's my point. My point on that regard is they were already given permission to go home.
Yeah.
They were given permission to go home under Cyrus.
Right.
Every single Jew that was in captivity at the time of when the Persians took over Babylon were allowed by royal decrees, King Cyrus's decree, if you feel the urge, go home. Set up your own temple. Worship your own God. Esther and Mordecai were of the people that decided, no, we'll hang out here.
Cyrus even offered to pay, didn't he?
Yes, he offered to pay them. He said, give them money to go home. Go back to your own land. You don't. Yes, you'll still be under our rule, but you'll have your own land.
You have some kind of freedom.
Yes, so there's huge problems. Listen to how this finishes, and this is where we'll end. Chapter 10. We've missed an opportunity, I think, or they've missed the opportunity to set off a day of fasting and prayer and worship to the Lord, to acknowledge His deliverance, anything. There's no record of a song to the Lord. Remember when the Jews came across out of Egypt and they went across God opened up the Red Sea? And they walked across dry ground. They got to the other side. The Egyptian army is coming at hot pace in their chariots, and they're down in the Red Sea. The walls are still opened. The Jews get to the other side, and God tells Moses, raise your hand or raise a staff across the water. And he does, and the walls pour on the entire Egyptian army and kill everybody in the entire army. Deliverance. Right? Deliverance from the enemies of God, of the enemies of the Jews, to use Esther's vernacular, the way whoever she's writing this is writing this. The enemies of the Jews. What do? Do they say, hey, party? No, they don't. They don't say party at all. They've just watched God destroy a whole army by pouring this water over the top of this ocean, this sea. I've been there. I know what it looks like. It is awesome to think that was once parted and they walked on dry ground. They believe it's 2,500 feet down, the bottom of this water. The ground, 2,500 feet. So imagine you are a Jew walking on dry ground from Egypt over to Sinai.
But wouldn't they have to go down and then up?
Yes, it goes down and it comes up. And when you go down the wall, you look on this side, it's 2,500 feet, 2,500 feet high on this side, 2,500 feet wide on that side. And the only thing that's holding it is nothing. You see nothing holding it. All you know is Moses said, watch this. Watch God.
Run.
And they get to the other side, and Moses puts open his hand, and the armies of Israel, or the armies of Egypt, are destroyed. Destroyed. They found chariots, wheels and stuff down on the bottom of that in places. So, what do they do when they get to this side? Moses bursts out into a full chapter song. Huge song. Huge song. All the people, Miriam, his sister, and all the women bring out tambourines and they dance and they praise God and they say, you are great, you are awesome, you are wonderful, you've delivered us. And what we get in Esther is you got this great day of deliverance and it's, pass me the jug.
Yeah.
Yay! Let's get happy.
Party.
Yeah. So who gets the recognition? Chapter 10. King Xerxes imposed tribute throughout the empire to its distant shores, and all his acts of power and might, together with the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, to which the king had raised him, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Media and Persia? Mordecai the Jew was second in rank to King Xerxes, preeminent among the Jews, and held in high esteem by his many fellow Jews, because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. End of the book of Esther. Who gets the glory? Mordecai. I give you a warning. Just because I've learned this warning just by reading this one, by going through Esther. I don't think I can look at Esther the same way I used to. It's not possible. But I want you to know it's not the only book that needs you to be very discerning about it, to be very wise about what you're reading. How many people know the story of Job?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know the story of Job? Very quickly, prominent man, righteous man. God called him a righteous man. God holds counsel in heaven. Satan walks up. God says, have you noticed my servant Job? Allows Satan to destroy his life for the most part. And then for the majority of the story of Job, it's 42 chapters long, but the majority of those chapters are 3 friends that come in and try to counsel Job while he has boils and he's sitting in ashes and he's scraping his boils and he has nightmares every night and everything's going on. And we get to, and they're telling him, you know what? You got to understand God. If you just understand God, God is like this, and He is this way, and this is how He treats sin. And if you're good and you're righteous and you haven't sinned, then He's going to bless you and He's going to do this. But look at you, Job. You got serious problems. You've been hit pretty hard by God. God hates sin. You have sin in your life. You need to repent. And for all those chapters, that's what you hear. That's what you hear. Huh? It's not intervention, although they tried to get in there. They tried to tell him who God was. So you, as a Bible student, have to read all of their dialogue, all of the things that they say about God. And you get to the end, and because it was written in the Bible, you say it's true. Be careful. Just because something is written in the Bible does not mean that what was written is true. It may have been said, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it was true. Let me tell you what God said about what those men said about him. In Job 42, after the Lord has restored Job, he says this, and starting in verse 7 of 42. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you and your 2 friends. Why? Because you have not spoken of me what is right. He says it again at the end. You have not spoken of me what is right. That's in the end of verse 8. God says it twice. What is recorded of what you said was not right. Be careful what you read. Make sure it's in the right context. Make sure you understand where it fits. Because people quote the things that those 3 friends said today as that's God. God says, you did not speak of me what is right. You lied about me.
Well, and the fact is, Job was picked because God saw him as a righteous example to the enemy. What an honor to be picked, in spite of the fact that he suffered greatly. I want to meet Job.
Job's a pretty awesome guy. But I want you to think about that. When you're reading, be careful of what you're reading. Make sure that it's in the right place. And here's the last warning, the last caution I give you. Just because something is told to you, don't believe it. Whether I tell you, whether some great, phenomenal preacher says it, some old dead guy who was great way in the past. You know, Martin Luther was wonderful when it comes to the doctrine of justification and how we're saved. Amazing man. I don't agree with him when it comes to his future events and where Israel fits. I think he missed that part. John Calvin, wonderful man on the doctrines of grace and God's sovereign hand. Wonderful, wonderful, deeply gifted man, I think. But the way he lived his life in Geneva and what he wanted to do, if you weren't godly, he would kill you. He wanted to set up laws like that in the city that he was in. Not quite. Something's off there. I don't know all the details of his life, but just because someone who is a great founding father somewhere, or because it's been around for 2,000 years, has it? Really has it been? Has it been? Have you looked? Or are you just trusting the guy that's in the pulpit that he knows what it is, or the book that they know what it is? You are being held accountable. You need to go look. You need to find out. Be very careful with what you believe just like that. Test the spirits. Test the word. Find out what it's like. And the last thing is, here's your exhortation. Don't be like Esther and Mordecai. When God comes in and delivers you, when God does something glorious in your life, be sure to give him the honor. Be sure to give him the acknowledgement. God did it. God delivered. God is great. Be careful that you don't stand in the place and say, that's right, I did it. Whoa. Whoa, be careful on that one. Give God the glory all the time. Let's pray.